So today, we're going to unpack a management framework that is so intense, so out there, it's named after one of the most famously fearless animals on the planet, the honey badger. This is a whole new operating model, and it's designed from the ground up for the really complex, high-stakes world of hybrid human AI teams. But before we dive into the nuts and bolts, let's just start with a question that gets right to the heart of why this whole thing is so controversial. Seriously, think about this. Could pitting your own team members against each other in a structured competition actually unlock a higher level of performance? I know, it sounds counterintuitive, maybe even a little nuts, but it's a core piece of what we're about to explore. Okay, so what is the Honey Badger Management Framework, or HBMF? Well, it's a complete system designed for those situations where you just don't know the right answer. It mashes together 4 key ideas: unbelievably fast work cycles, that internal competition we just mentioned, giving AI assistants a formal seat at the table, and building in deliberate backup capacity. This really is a full-throttle approach for a new era of work. To really get a handle on this, we need to talk about something the paper calls the Lego fallacy. So imagine you have a box full of these perfectly good, scientifically proven Lego bricks, right? Each one is great on its own. But that doesn't guarantee that when you snap them all together, you're going to end up with a sturdy structure. They might not fit right, or they could even work against each other. And that is the central challenge in trying to figure out if this Honey Badger framework actually works.
And that leads us straight into this classic evidence paradox. You see, companies want solid proof that a radical new system like this works before they even think about trying it. But you can't get that real-world proof until somebody is brave enough to adopt it. So, the source paper we're looking at today takes a really smart approach. It's called proxy validation. It basically breaks the framework down into its individual Lego bricks and then digs into all the existing scientific research for evidence on each one.
So, let's do just that. Let's deconstruct this framework and take a close look at each of its 4 foundational pillars. You know, the core Lego bricks of the Honey Badger system. All right, here they are, the big 4. First, you've got these ultra-short 7-day work cycles that you can cancel at any time. Second, there's that governed competition, where 2 internal subteams go head-to-head on the exact same problem. Third is AI teaming, where AI assistants aren't just tools, they're treated as formal contributors. And fourth, redundancy, deliberately creating overlap in skills and people so the team is way more resilient.
Now for the fun part. We're going to put on our investigator hats and actually grade the evidence for each one of these pillars. Think of it like a report card for each Lego brick, based on decades of research from economics, psychology, and engineering.
First up, short cycles. The idea of working in these aggressive 7-day sprints, well, it's backed by some seriously solid economic theory. Things like real options theory and batch economics basically prove that working in smaller chunks reduces risk and gives you more chances to change direction. The evidence here is really strong. It gets a solid A-.
Okay, now for the most controversial pillar, governed competition. The theory behind it, called tournament theory, is actually pretty sound. Offering a prize for who does better does make people work harder. But, and this is a huge but, the risk is massive. Study after study shows that without perfect, and I mean perfect governance, this kind of competition can lead to sabotage, cheating, and a totally toxic culture. That's why it gets a pretty shaky C+, maybe a B-. It's powerful for sure, but it's also incredibly fragile. So what about bringing AI onto the team? Well, the evidence is pretty clear that AI assistants make individuals way more productive. The real risk, though, is that we just don't know how this affects the team as a whole. Does it actually improve collaboration, or does it create all new kinds of friction? Because those team-level effects are still a big open question, this pillar gets a B.
And finally, we've got redundancy. This idea comes straight out of reliability engineering. You know, having backup systems, or in this case, overlapping skills, makes the entire system much less likely to fail completely. The principle is very strong, though it does mean you have higher costs for coordination. This one earns a solid B+. Okay, so we've graded the individual bricks. Some are definitely stronger than others. But now we have to face that Lego fallacy again. What happens when we try to snap these pieces together? Well, this reveals the single biggest point of tension in the entire framework. And here's where it gets really tricky. On one side, you have competition, which is designed to crank up effort and performance. On the other, you have what's called psychological safety, that feeling that it's safe to take risks, to admit you made a mistake, to speak your mind. That safety is absolutely essential for learning and innovation. But these 2 forces can directly tear each other apart. I mean, how can you feel safe to fail when you're in a high-stakes tournament against your own colleague? This right here is the make or break problem for the Honey Badger framework. And to solve it, the framework proposes a very specific solution, a kind of secret sauce in the form of a person. Let's meet the guru. Now, the guru isn't a manager or a boss. A much better way to think of them is like a referee and a safety officer, all rolled into one. Their entire job is to be a neutral third party with the authority to enforce the rules, to watch for toxic behavior like sabotage, and most importantly, to protect the team's psychological safety. They are the human ligament that's supposed to hold this whole high-tension structure together. And believe me, this job is incredibly hands-on. The guru is actively reinforcing an anti-sabotage culture. They are constantly monitoring psychological safety and have the power to step in. They act as the judge in any disputes, and they even publish weekly notes to the wider organization to keep everything transparent. This is not a passive role. It's active, constant governance. So after looking at all the pieces, the powerful pillars, the critical tensions, and the guru who's designed to manage it all, what's the final verdict on the Honey Badger management framework?
Well, the source paper sums it up perfectly. HBMF is, and I quote, best treated as a testable organizational hypothesis. In other words, it's a coherent, defensible idea. All the individual Lego bricks have some basis in theory and evidence, but as a complete integrated system, it's still just a hypothesis. It makes sense on paper, but it desperately needs to be tested out in the real world.
And the paper proposes exactly how to do that. The clear next step is a small, controlled pilot study. You run the framework for 3 months with a couple of teams. You measure everything. And, this part is critical, you have a predefined kill switch. If the data shows that psychological safety is taking a nosedive, you stop the experiment immediately. It's a call for careful, responsible science.
Which leaves us with this final, bigger question to chew on. The entire Honey Badger framework, with its intense competition, really only seems possible because of the guru's role in enforcing transparency and safety. So, as we build more complex teams with both humans and AI, could it be that this kind of radical, enforced transparency isn't just some weird feature of one wild framework, but maybe the essential key to making it all work?